Some time ago, I made a top 10 list of ultimate level Digimon, and looking back on that, it was a pretty fun video to make. So in considering what I should put together next, I decided to use the idea again. But this time I'm going to deviate from the typical subject material and focus on something a bit broader. Younger siblings. They tend to steal the attention and break our stuff, but we still love them because they're family. Apparently that hasn't escaped the staffs of television programs over the past few decades, and as a result we have been given a good number of surprisingly endearing characters. So to pay somewhat of a tribute, I've compiled a list of the top 10 younger sibling characters from television. Number 10. Dewey. Often younger siblings are portrayed as the victims of an older sibling's indifferent or bullying proclivities. But every now and then we see one that tends to take advantage of those around him, or her. And Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle is one of them. Despite his seemingly innocent exterior, he is evidently just as mischievous as either of his brothers, Malcolm and Reese, and even tends to outwit them on occasion, such as when they all competed for the attention of their babysitter. However, for all the humorous moments he provided the show, I had to place him this low on the list because as the show progressed and the actor aged, much of the humor that was affiliated with Dewey just ceased to work, since the character was pretty much portrayed as a young teenager that just couldn't escape his role as the small child. Number 9. Angelica's baby brother. Now, for those of you who grew up watching the Rugrats, you may be thinking, Angelica didn't have a baby brother. Well, she didn't. Except during a dream sequence in the episode Angelica's Worst Nightmare. In this episode, Angelica basically learns that her mother, Charlotte, is going to have a baby, which apparently causes Angelica to worry about losing attention from her parents. One night, she has a dream that the baby has arrived, and even speaks like a thug, saying such things as, "I'm the new baby and you're the old baby, so you'd better scram." Still dreaming and terrified, she runs to her parents, who only reveal that they are going to move Angelica to the laundry room, with nothing but a piece of cheese for dinner. Oh, and it gets better. The baby brother has inexplicably grown to adult size and proceeds to chase Angelica around the house until Angelica attempts to escape in a life-size toy car. And just when you think it's over, something really scary happens. The baby brother has now grown to giant monster size, picks up the car, and menacingly asks himself, I wonder what toy car tastes like. Now that's terrifying. He may have had only one appearance, but he certainly provided the scariest moment in this countdown. Number 8. Dot. From the classic animated series Animaniacs, Dot is the youngest of the 3 Warner siblings, as well as the only female in the trio. She is essentially the cute member of the group, which is central to many jokes affiliated with her. In fact, the whole episode was once devoted to this. In addition, the fact that she is the only girl provides for some humorous contrast between the mannerisms of herself and her brothers, Yakko and Wakko, particularly during the scenes with Hello Nurse, making for an interesting running gag within a running gag, if that makes any sense. Throughout the series, she would sometimes serve as a central character in some hilarious parodies, including what, in my opinion, is one of the best parodies of the fairy tale Snow White. To top it all off, the fact that she was ill during the movie Wakko's Wish provided for one surprisingly heartfelt moment, indicating how versatile the character can be. She can be an innocent child in one sequence and a scolding influence in the next. Despite all of this, though, I decided not to place Dot higher on the list because she was not as much of a focus within her respective program as some of the other characters on the list. Number 7. Dexter. Mad scientists have had a fair share of roles during the history of television, from the evil scientist in Looney Tunes to Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. But in 1996, Cartoon Network whipped out one character that, in my opinion, practically reinvented the image of a mad scientist. Dexter was the star of one of the best programs on Cartoon Network, fitting considering all the crazy scenarios that could be thought up with this character, who is essentially a young scientific genius with a secret laboratory in his house and a dim-witted sister, Dee Dee, whose habit of destroying Dexter's experiments would end up being a surprisingly versatile running gag. The thing I love about this character is that he still suffers from the naivety of children his age, despite his intellect. For example, although he can grasp calculus and quantum mechanics, he apparently does not know what a clown is, and even believed it to be an inhuman creature. Upon suffering a bite from the clown's ejected dentures, Dexter contracts a virus that causes him to turn into a clown by nightfall, making for an innovative take on the whole werewolf scenario. In addition, with the typical child prodigy character, there is the apparent lack of athletic ability, and Dexter is no exception. However, because of his inability to accept failure, he uses his intellect to overcome said inability, and often becomes overzealous in the process, such as when he vows to catch his sister with his new bike by making a few modifications to it, resulting in one great parody of the Roadrunner cartoons. In fact, Dexter would often get himself into everyday situations that just happened to be blown out of proportion, to the point that even trying to catch the ice cream man would turn into one hilarious sequence after another. And Dexter's unorthodox and over-the-top means of coping with these situations never ceased to bring laughter, at least not until the series revamped. Number 6. Mary and Weezer. I know it's a bit unorthodox to give the same spot to two characters, but it's not that I couldn't decide which one deserved it more, only that these two characters are so inseparable when they come to mind that not including them both would seem like an injustice. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. For all of you who don't know about these two, let me ask something. Have you ever seen the film The Little Rascals? We all know about Alfalfa, Spanky, Stymie, and the rest of the gang, but what most people apparently don't know is that the film is actually based on a 1930s series by Hal Roach titled Our Gang, which would later be known as The Little Rascals, and was honestly such a good series that it deserves its own video mention. Here we learn that there were other earlier characters, including Jack Cooper, Farina, Chubby, Joe, Mary, and Weezer. Although which family they were a part of, or whether they were siblings at all, varied within the series, these two never failed to pull off a memorable moment, or gag, such as when Mary leaves Weezer in charge of a small general store, Mary breaks into a boxing match, or Weezer demonstrates subtraction to Stymie. Mary herself is particularly notable due to her distinctive mannerisms amongst the female characters in this program, often delivering witty remarks or making an over-the-top expression. Weezer was basically the early template for Dewey, but I believe him to be more effective because you could all actually sympathize with him, whereas Dewey was too conniving to sympathize with. In a way, these two actually established what a younger sibling should be on television, essentially and often inadvertently prone to making life a bit more difficult for those older than them, yet sympathetic at the same time. Although there were other younger siblings in this series, including Spanky, who always stole the show in his early years, I decided not to include these as well because I decided to only include these two because I feel that they were not given enough recognition. Also, I could have filled most of this list with characters from the Little Rascals, but as James Rolfe stated in one of his videos, that would have been too easy.